Have you ever wondered why you do everything right, but your financial reality never changes? Why you read every book, follow every strategy, analyze every investment opportunity until your eyes burn from the screen light at 2 a.m., yet you're still stuck in the same financial loop, watching other people effortlessly build wealth while you remain frozen in analysis paralysis, too terrified to make the wrong move, so you end up making no move at all. You're not alone in this prison of perfectionism. And what I'm about to share with you isn't another productivity hack or investment strategy. It's the hidden truth about why your own psychology has become your greatest financial enemy, and why the very traits that make you careful, analytical, and thorough are the same traits that are keeping you broke, anxious, and trapped in a cycle of financial mediocrity that feels impossible to break. If you found this video, it's not by accident. Something in your energy, something in your frequency drew you here because your soul is ready to understand what your mind has been fighting against. You're ready to discover why your perfectionism isn't protecting you, it's paralyzing you. Why your fear of making mistakes isn't keeping you safe, it's keeping you small. And why your anxiety about money isn't just an emotion, it's a frequency that's been broadcasting lack into your reality for years, maybe decades. The people who stumble upon this message are the overthinkers, the analyzers, the ones who have turned financial planning into a form of self-torture. You're the person who has 17 different spreadsheets tracking your expenses, but you've never actually invested in anything because you're waiting for the perfect opportunity. You're the one who knows more about compound interest than most financial advisors, but you've never experienced it because you're too afraid to start with what you have. You're the one who reads success stories and thinks they got lucky, while simultaneously believing that if you just research a little more, plan a little better, wait a little longer, you'll finally be ready to make your move. But here's the paradox that's been eating you alive. The more prepared you try to become, the less prepared you feel. The more you learn about investing, the more terrifying it becomes. The more you analyze market trends, the more convinced you become that you'll inevitably choose the wrong moment to enter. You've created a prison of knowledge where information has become a drug that feeds your anxiety rather than empowering your decisions. You know so much about what could go wrong that you've forgotten what could go right. And the cruelest part? Deep down, you know you're running out of time. Every month that passes while you're stuck in analysis mode is another month of lost compound interest. Every opportunity you don't take because it's not perfect is another opportunity that someone else, someone with less knowledge, less preparation, less concern for getting it right, takes and profits from. You're watching your financial future slip away, not because you don't know what to do, but because you know too much about what could go wrong. This isn't just about money. This pattern shows up everywhere in your life, doesn't it? The job you didn't apply for because you weren't 100% qualified. The relationship you sabotaged because you were terrified of being vulnerable and getting hurt. The business idea you never launched because you couldn't guarantee its success. The creative project you abandoned because it wasn't perfect. The conversation you never had because you couldn't predict every possible response. You've turned life into a chess game where you're trying to think 17 moves ahead, but you never actually make the first move. Your perfectionism is a trauma response. Your need to have every answer before you ask the question is a survival mechanism born from a time when making a mistake felt like it could cost you everything: love, acceptance, safety, belonging. Somewhere along the way, probably in childhood, you learned that being wrong was dangerous, that making mistakes meant you were flawed, that not knowing something made you vulnerable to judgment, criticism, or abandonment. So you developed this armor of over-preparation, this shield of endless research, this fortress of analysis that was supposed to protect you from ever being caught off guard again. But that armor has become a prison. That shield has become a barrier between you and the life you want to live. That fortress has become a tomb where your dreams go to die while you're still researching whether they're worth pursuing. Here's what's happening in your nervous system right now. As you watch this video, part of you is excited because you recognize yourself in every word I'm saying, and part of you is terrified because you know I'm about to ask you to do the thing that scares you most. Take action before you feel completely ready. Your perfectionist mind is already trying to protect you by creating escape routes. This doesn't apply to me, or I just need to finish this one last research project, or I'll implement this advice after I save up a little more money. But your soul, that part of you that drew you to this video, knows better. Your soul knows that you've been ready for years. Your soul knows that the perfect moment you've been waiting for is a fantasy that your fear created to keep you safe in your comfort zone. Your soul knows that every day you spend preparing to live is a day you're not actually living. The financial anxiety you experience isn't just about money, it's about control. You believe that if you can just gather enough information, create enough contingency plans, anticipate enough potential problems, you can control the outcome. But the market doesn't care about your research. Success doesn't wait for your permission. Wealth doesn't build itself while you're deciding whether you're ready to build it. And here's the thing that your perfectionist mind doesn't want you to understand. The people who are actually building wealth, the ones whose financial lives you admire and envy, didn't wait until they felt ready. They didn't have perfect information. They didn't eliminate all risk. They made decisions with incomplete data. They started before they felt prepared. They embraced uncertainty as the price of admission to a life worth living. They understood something that you are about to discover. Progress is more valuable than perfection, and done is more profitable than perfect. The anxiety you feel about money isn't protecting you from financial loss. It's guaranteeing it. Every day you spend paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong decision is a day of guaranteed loss, because the cost of inaction is always higher than the cost of imperfect action. The interest you're not earning, the opportunities you're not taking, the experiences you're not having, the security you're not building, these are the real costs of your perfectionism. But what if I told you that your sensitivity, your analytical nature, your desire to do things right aren't weaknesses to overcome, but superpowers to harness? What if the very traits that have been paralyzing you could become your greatest financial assets once you learn to work with them instead of against them? What if your perfectionism, when properly channeled, could give you an edge that more impulsive people will never have? If this is resonating with you, if you see yourself in this description, do me a favor. Leave a comment below with just one word: ready. Don't explain yourself. Don't tell me your story. Just let me know that you recognize yourself in this message. I read every comment, and I want to know that this is landing with the right people. The people who are drawn to this message are special. You're the ones who feel everything deeply, who care about getting it right, who understand that financial decisions have consequences that ripple through every area of your life. You're not careless with money because you're not careless with anything. You don't make impulsive decisions because you understand that choices have consequences. You don't gamble with your financial future because you know that money isn't just numbers on a screen. It's security, freedom, options, dignity, the ability to take care of yourself and the people you love. But somewhere along the way, your gift became a curse. Your thoughtfulness became overthinking. Your caution became paralysis. Your wisdom became worry. And now you're stuck in a loop where the very qualities that could make you wealthy are the qualities that are keeping you broke. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That feeling when you find a great investment opportunity and instead of being excited, you immediately start thinking about everything that could go wrong. That moment when you consider starting a side business and instead of focusing on the potential, you start cataloging all the ways it could fail. That sensation when someone suggests you ask for a raise and instead of feeling confident about your worth, you start imagining all the reasons your boss might say no. This is your nervous system trying to protect you from disappointment, rejection, failure, loss. But it's also protecting you from success, growth, abundance, and the financial freedom you claim you want. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between actual danger and perceived danger, so it treats every financial decision like a life or death situation, flooding your body with stress hormones that make clear thinking impossible and decisive action feel terrifying. And here's the part that might make you angry. While you've been trapped in this cycle of analysis paralysis, other people with less knowledge, less preparation, less concern for getting it right, have been taking action and getting results. They've been building wealth not because they're smarter or more deserving, but because they understand something you're about to learn. Wealth is built by people who take imperfect action, not by people who wait for perfect conditions. But I'm not here to shame you for your caution or criticize you for your thoroughness. I'm here to show you how to transform your perfectionism from a liability into an asset, how to channel your analytical nature into profitable action, how to use your sensitivity as a competitive advantage rather than a source of anxiety. Because the truth is, the world needs people like you in positions of financial strength. We need thoughtful, careful, conscientious people to be wealthy because we can trust you to use that wealth responsibly. The problem isn't that you care too much. It's that you've been caring about the wrong things. Instead of caring about getting it perfect, you need to care about getting it started. Instead of focusing on avoiding all mistakes, you need to focus on making recoverable mistakes. Instead of trying to eliminate all risk, you need to learn to take calculated risks. Instead of waiting until you feel ready, you need to act your way into readiness. This shift from perfectionism to progress, from analysis to action, from waiting to starting, isn't just about changing your financial situation. It's about reclaiming your power as a creator of your own reality. It's about breaking free from the prison of other people's expectations and the tyranny of your own impossible standards. It's about finally understanding that you don't have to be perfect to be successful. You don't have to have all the answers to ask the right questions, and you don't have to eliminate all risk to create the life you want. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you think you know about money, success, and the relationship between preparation and achievement. You're going to learn why your perfectionism isn't protecting you, but paralyzing you. Why your need for certainty is creating more uncertainty, and why the financial security you're trying to build through endless preparation can only be created through imperfect action. Most importantly, you're going to discover how to rewire your nervous system for financial success, how to make peace with uncertainty, and how to transform your anxiety into excitement about the opportunities that are waiting for you to finally say yes. But first, we need to understand exactly why your current approach isn't working, why more preparation isn't making you feel more prepared, and why the very strategies you're using to protect yourself from financial loss are actually guaranteeing it. What if I told you that your own energy is creating the static that prevents your manifestation? That every time you sit down to make a financial decision, every time you research another investment strategy, every time you create another spreadsheet to track your progress toward goals you never actually pursue, you're not just procrastinating, you're broadcasting a frequency that's actively repelling the very wealth you're trying to attract. This is going to sound counterintuitive, maybe even offensive to your logical mind, but the reason your financial situation hasn't changed despite all your preparation, all your knowledge, all your careful planning isn't because you haven't learned enough or prepared enough or planned enough. It's because your energy, the frequency you're vibrating at on a cellular, emotional, and energetic level is completely out of alignment with what you say you want. Think about it like this. Imagine you're trying to tune into a radio station that plays the frequency of financial abundance. You know the station exists because you can hear other people listening to it. You see their success, their confidence, their ease with money. But when you try to tune in, all you get is static. So what do? You blame the radio. You assume you need a better antenna, more sophisticated equipment, a different location. You spend years upgrading your hardware, learning more, preparing more, analyzing more. But you never consider that the problem isn't your equipment. The problem is that you're transmitting interference on the same frequency you're trying to receive. Your perfectionism, your anxiety, your fear of making mistakes. These aren't just personality traits or emotional states. They're energetic frequencies that are creating static in your personal broadcast system. Every time you think, "I'm not ready," you're broadcasting not ready energy. Every time you think, "What if I lose money?" you're broadcasting loss energy. Every time you think, "I don't know enough," you're broadcasting inadequacy energy. And the universe, like a perfectly calibrated radio receiver, is picking up your signal and delivering exactly what you're broadcasting. More reasons to feel not ready, more situations that might result in loss, more evidence that you don't know enough. This is what I call the coherence problem, and it's the hidden reason why intelligent, capable, well-intentioned people like you can do everything right on paper, but still struggle financially. In reality, you're trying to manifest abundance from a frequency of lack. You're trying to create security from a frequency of fear. You're trying to build wealth from a frequency of unworthiness. It's like trying to get to Miami by boarding a plane to Alaska. It doesn't matter how sincere your intention is or how badly you want to feel those warm ocean breezes. You're going to end up somewhere cold and unfamiliar, because that's where your vehicle is programmed to take you. Your conscious mind, the part of you that's watching this video, The part that sets goals and makes plans and researches investment strategies, represents about 5% of your total mental activity. The other 95% is your subconscious mind, and it's running programs that were installed years ago, maybe decades ago, programs that were designed to keep you safe in a world where making mistakes felt dangerous, where being wrong meant being rejected, where taking risks could cost you everything that mattered. These subconscious programs are like background applications running on your computer. You might not be aware of them, but they're consuming massive amounts of processing power and completely determining what shows up on your screen. While your conscious mind is trying to research the best index funds, your subconscious mind is running a program that says, investing is dangerous because dad lost money in the stock market and mom cried for weeks. While your conscious mind is setting financial goals, your subconscious mind is running a program that says, wealthy people are greedy and I'm a good person, so I must not be meant to be wealthy. While your conscious mind is analyzing real estate opportunities, your subconscious mind is running a program that says, I don't deserve nice things because I'm not special enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. This is why positive thinking alone doesn't work. This is why vision boards and affirmations and goal-setting workshops leave you feeling inspired for a few days and then right back where you started. This is why you can intellectually understand compound interest and dollar cost averaging and diversification, but you still feel paralyzed when it comes time to actually transfer money from your savings account to an investment account. Your conscious mind is trying to drive north while your subconscious mind is steering south, and the result is that you just sit there spinning your wheels, burning fuel, going nowhere. The frequency you're broadcasting isn't just about your thoughts. It's about the unresolved emotions that are stored in your body, the traumatic memories that are encoded in your nervous system, the limiting beliefs that have become so familiar they feel like facts. Every time you feel that familiar anxiety when you think about money, you're not just experiencing an emotion, you're activating a frequency that tells the universe, send me more situations that make me feel anxious about money. Every time you procrastinate on a financial decision because you're afraid of making the wrong choice, you're not just delaying action, you're reinforcing a pattern that attracts more situations where you feel unprepared and overwhelmed. This is where most people get stuck because they think the solution is to fight against these feelings, to overcome their fears through willpower, to push through their anxiety with discipline and determination. But fighting against your own energy is like trying to stop a radio from picking up static by yelling at it. You can't overpower a frequency with force. You can only change it by understanding what's creating the interference and addressing it at the source. The interference in your personal frequency isn't random. It's specific, predictable, and deeply personal. It's connected to the first time you learned that money was scary, complicated, or dangerous. Maybe it was watching your parents fight about bills, or hearing that money doesn't grow on trees, or being told that you were too expensive when you asked for something you wanted. Maybe it was the shame you felt when you couldn't afford something your friends could afford, or the anxiety you absorbed from adults who were stressed about financial security, or the guilt you were taught to feel about wanting more than you had. These experiences didn't just create memories, they created neural pathways, emotional patterns, and energetic signatures that are still running your show today. The anxiety you feel about investing isn't really about the stock market. It's about the terror you felt as a child when you realized that the adults who were supposed to keep you safe were scared and uncertain about money. The perfectionism that paralyzes you isn't really about getting it right. It's about the deep fear that making a mistake with money will result in the same chaos, conflict, or scarcity you witnessed or experienced in your formative years. Your nervous system is still trying to protect the wounded child who learned that money was dangerous, unpredictable, and connected to survival. Every time you consider making a financial decision, that wounded child starts screaming warnings. What if we lose everything? What if we can't pay the bills? What if we end up like mom and dad, fighting and stressed and never having enough? And because your nervous system can't tell the difference between actual danger and remembered danger, it floods your body with the same stress hormones you would need to escape from a physical threat, making rational decision-making impossible and freezing you in a state of analysis paralysis. This is why you can know intellectually that diversified index fund investing is statistically safe over long time periods, but you still feel terrified to actually do it. This is why you can understand that starting a side business with a small amount of money you can afford to lose is a calculated risk worth taking, but you still find yourself researching and planning and preparing instead of actually starting. This is why you can recognize that asking for a raise is a normal part of career advancement, but you still feel like you're asking someone to take care of you instead of negotiating from a position of strength. The frequency of fear, anxiety, and unworthiness that was programmed into you at a young age is still broadcasting loudly enough to drown out the frequency of abundance, confidence, and deserving that you need to create the financial life you want. It's like trying to have a conversation with someone while standing next to a jet engine. No matter how important your message is, no matter how clearly you try to communicate, the noise makes meaningful connection impossible. But here's what your fear-based programming doesn't want you to understand. The very experiences that created your financial anxiety also gave you superpowers that most people don't have. Your sensitivity to financial risk makes you naturally good at researching investments and avoiding scams. Your attention to detail helps you spot opportunities and problems that other people miss. Your cautiousness protects you from the kind of impulsive decisions that destroy wealth. Your empathy helps you understand market psychology in ways that purely analytical people can't. Your perfectionism, when properly channeled, drives you to create systems and processes that generate consistent results. The problem isn't that you have these traits. The problem is that they're being hijacked by unresolved trauma and limiting beliefs that turn your gifts into curses. Your research skills become endless procrastination. Your attention to detail becomes obsessive analysis. Your cautiousness becomes paralyzing fear. Your empathy becomes anxiety about everyone else's opinions. Your perfectionism becomes impossible standards that prevent you from ever taking action. This hijacking happens automatically, below the level of your conscious awareness, because your nervous system is still operating from the belief that financial decisions are life or death situations. When you were young and powerless, financial stress in your environment really was life-threatening. If the adults couldn't pay for food or shelter or medical care, your survival was genuinely at risk. So your nervous system learned to treat anything money-related as a potential survival threat, and it's still using that same threat detection system today, even though you're now an adult with resources, options, and the ability to recover from financial mistakes. The incoherence between what you want, financial abundance, and what you're broadcasting, financial fear, creates a constant state of internal conflict that's exhausting, confusing, and ultimately self-defeating. Part of you is trying to move toward wealth, while another part of you is trying to protect you from the imagined dangers of wealth. Part of you wants to take calculated risks, while another part of you believes that any risk is too much risk. Part of you knows you're capable and deserving, while another part of you whispers that you're not smart enough, experienced enough, or worthy enough to succeed. This internal conflict doesn't just create emotional suffering. It creates energetic chaos that makes clear decision-making impossible and consistent action unsustainable. You make a plan, then you sabotage it. You take a step forward, then you take 2 steps back. You build momentum, then you find a reason to stop. You get excited about an opportunity, then you talk yourself out of it. You research a strategy until you understand it perfectly. Then you decide you need to research something else instead of implementing what you already know. The most insidious part of this pattern is that it's self-reinforcing. Every time you choose analysis over action, every time you prioritize preparation over progress, every time you let fear disguised as caution keep you from taking the next step, you're gathering evidence that supports your original programming. See? Your wounded inner child says, money really is scary and complicated and dangerous. Good thing I'm here to protect you from making any terrible mistakes. And so, the cycle continues, with your own inaction creating the financial stagnation that proves to your nervous system that it's right to keep you safe from financial risk. This is why traditional financial advice doesn't work for people like you. Traditional advice assumes you're starting from a coherent frequency, that your conscious intentions and your subconscious programming are aligned, that your nervous system supports the goals your rational mind has set. But when you're broadcasting incoherence, when your energy is split between wanting abundance and fearing it, between knowing you're capable and doubting your worthiness, between understanding what works and being afraid to implement it, no strategy will work consistently because you're sabotaging yourself at the energetic level. You can have the best investment strategy in the world, but if you're vibrating at the frequency of, "I don't deserve wealth," you'll find ways to avoid implementing it. You can have the most detailed business plan ever written, but if you're broadcasting, "I'm not good enough to succeed," you'll procrastinate on taking action until the opportunity passes. You can have clear financial goals and a specific timeline, but if your nervous system believes that achieving those goals will make you unsafe somehow, it will create enough anxiety and overwhelm to keep you stuck exactly where you are. The solution isn't to fight against your anxiety, override your perfectionism, or push through your fear. The solution is to understand that these responses are symptoms of a deeper incoherence, and that incoherence is the result of unhealed trauma that's still running your financial life from behind the scenes. Until you address the root cause, the original wound that taught you that money was dangerous, that you weren't worthy of abundance, that making mistakes could cost you everything that mattered, you'll keep experiencing the same symptoms no matter how many new strategies you try or how much more you prepare. But what if I told you that this wound, this source of all your financial anxiety and paralysis, isn't actually the problem you think it is? What if the very thing you've been trying to avoid, deny, or overcome is actually the key to unlocking the financial abundance you've been seeking? What if your greatest weakness is actually your greatest strength in disguise, waiting for you to finally understand how to work with it instead of against it? But to understand this incoherence, we need to go deeper. We need to find the wound. Because this static in your energetic field isn't a defect, it's an echo of your past, and it has a name. It has a face. It has a voice that's been whispering the same limiting beliefs into your ear for so long that you've forgotten it's not your own voice speaking. What quantum physics doesn't explain is that your energetic field is a mirror, and what it reflects back to you isn't random. It's the exact frequency of your unhealed wounds, your unprocessed trauma, your unconscious beliefs about what you deserve, what's possible for you, and what's safe for you to experience. Every financial struggle you've had, every opportunity you've missed, every moment of paralysis when faced with a money decision, these aren't coincidences or bad luck or evidence that you're not cut out for wealth. These are precise reflections of the wound that's been running your financial life from the shadows. The wound has many faces, but they all share the same core message. You are not safe with money. You are not worthy of abundance. You cannot be trusted to make good financial decisions. This message wasn't born from your adult experiences with money. It was programmed into your nervous system when you were young, vulnerable, and completely dependent on adults who themselves were wounded around money, who themselves were operating from their own unhealed financial trauma. Maybe your wound sounds like your father's voice, sharp with frustration, saying, "Money doesn't grow on trees," when you asked for something you wanted, teaching you that wanting things was somehow shameful or unrealistic. Maybe it sounds like your mother's anxiety, the worry that leaked out of every financial conversation, teaching you that money was something to fear rather than something to master. Maybe it sounds like the silence that filled the house when bills came in, teaching you that money was so dangerous and overwhelming that it couldn't even be discussed openly. Or maybe your wound is more subtle, woven into the fabric of your family's beliefs about money, success, and worthiness. Maybe you learned that good people don't care about money, that wanting wealth makes you greedy or shallow. Maybe you absorbed the belief that struggle is noble, that ease is suspicious, that if you're not working incredibly hard and sacrificing constantly, you don't deserve what you have. Maybe you internalized the message that there's not enough to go around, that someone else's success means less opportunity for you, that wealth is a zero-sum game where your abundance comes at the cost of someone else's security. These messages didn't just create thoughts, they created neural pathways that are still firing today, emotional patterns that are still playing out in your financial life, energetic signatures that are still broadcasting into the quantum field and attracting experiences that match their frequency. Every time you hesitate before making an investment, every time you research something to death instead of taking action, every time you talk yourself out of an opportunity because it feels too good to be true, you're not just being cautious. You're being obedient to programming that was installed before you had the capacity to question it. This is what I call the observer effect in personal reality creation. In quantum physics, the observer effect demonstrates that the act of observation changes what's being observed. Particles behave differently when they're being watched versus when they're not. In your financial life, this principle operates on a much more personal and profound level. What you consistently observe and expect in your financial reality is what gets created, even when what you're observing and expecting is completely unconscious. Here's how this works in practical terms. Your wounded inner child is constantly scanning your environment for evidence that confirms what it already believes about money and your relationship to it. If your core wound carries the message, "I'm not worthy of abundance," your unconscious mind will notice every piece of evidence that supports this belief while filtering out evidence that contradicts it. You'll remember every financial mistake you've ever made while forgetting your successes. You'll focus on the risks of every opportunity while minimizing the potential rewards. You'll notice every story about someone losing money in the market while missing the stories about people building wealth through consistent investing. This selective attention isn't just changing what you notice, it's changing what you create. When you're unconsciously observing your reality through the lens of "I'm not worthy of wealth," you make decisions that prove this belief true. You don't negotiate for the salary you deserve because, deep down, you don't believe you deserve it. You don't invest in growth opportunities because you don't believe they'll work for you. You don't take calculated risks because your nervous system has classified all financial risk as life-threatening danger. The most devastating example of this observer effect is how your wound creates what I call the quantum mirror, a feedback loop where your unhealed trauma literally creates the exact circumstances that reinforce and validate that trauma. If your core wound is, "I always make the wrong financial decisions," your unconscious mind will guide you toward decisions that prove this belief true, not because you're self-destructive, but because your nervous system finds comfort in familiar patterns, even when those patterns are painful. Let me give you a real example of how this quantum mirror operates. Sarah had a deep wound around feeling stupid about money, stemming from childhood experiences where her parents made her feel ashamed for not understanding complex financial concepts. As an adult, this wound expressed itself as analysis paralysis. She would research investments obsessively, but never actually invest because she was terrified of making the stupid choice. But here's the quantum mirror in action. By never investing, Sarah guaranteed that she would continue to feel behind and uninformed about money. By choosing the safety of inaction, she created exactly the financial stagnation that her wounded inner child was trying to avoid. Her attempt to protect herself from feeling stupid about money ensured that she would always feel stupid about money because she never gave herself the chance to learn through experience, to build confidence through small wins, to develop the financial wisdom that only comes from actually participating in the game she was afraid to play. The quantum mirror doesn't just reflect your fears back to you, it amplifies them. Every time Sarah chose research over action, her inner wound collected more evidence. See, you don't know enough yet. You're not ready. You need to study more before you can be trusted with real money decisions. And so the cycle continued, with her own inaction creating the exact outcome her wound was designed to prevent. This is happening in your life right now, in ways that are so familiar, you've stopped noticing them. Your wound is creating the very experiences that validate its existence, and you're interpreting those experiences as proof that your limiting beliefs are actually facts about reality, rather than projections of unhealed trauma. If your wound tells you that good opportunities always go to other people, you'll unconsciously arrive late to opportunities, underprepare for interviews, or sabotage your chances of success in subtle ways that ensure you don't get selected. Then point to this pattern as evidence that you're right about opportunities not being available to you. If your wound tells you that I can't be trusted with money, you'll make impulsive purchases when you're emotional, avoid looking at your bank statements when you're anxious, or fail to follow through on financial plans when they start working. Then use these behaviors as proof that you really can't be trusted with money. If your wound tells you that wealth changes people in bad ways, you'll unconsciously sabotage your own success whenever you start making progress toward financial goals, finding reasons to quit jobs that are advancing your career, abandoning business projects that are starting to generate income, or making financial decisions that keep you stuck at a comfortable level of financial mediocrity. This is why positive thinking and goal setting and vision boards don't work for people who are operating from unhealed financial trauma. You can consciously set all the intentions you want, but if your unconscious wound is broadcasting a different frequency, your actions will align with your wound, not your intentions. You can visualize abundance all day long, but if your nervous system believes that abundance is dangerous, it will create enough anxiety and self-sabotage to keep you exactly where your wound believes you belong. The observer effect in your personal reality isn't just about what you notice, it's about what you expect, and expectation is the most powerful force in personal reality creation. Your wound doesn't just carry beliefs about what happened in the past. It carries expectations about what will happen in the future, and those expectations become self-fulfilling prophecies that create experiences which validate the original wound. If your wound expects that I'll never have enough money, you'll make financial decisions from a place of scarcity that ensures you never have enough. You'll under-earn by not asking for raises or charging what you're worth. You'll oversave by keeping money in low-yield accounts because you're too afraid to invest. You'll overspend on things that promise security but don't actually create it. All of these behaviors stem from the expectation of not having enough, and all of them create the experience of not having enough. If your wound expects that financial success requires sacrificing everything else that matters, you'll unconsciously create work-life imbalance whenever you start making money, burning out, damaging relationships, or neglecting your health in ways that make wealth feel dangerous and unsustainable. Then use this experience as proof that you have to choose between money and happiness. This is the cruelest aspect of unhealed financial trauma. It doesn't just create suffering, it creates suffering that looks like evidence that your limiting beliefs are true. Your wound is incredibly sophisticated in how it maintains itself. It doesn't create obviously self-destructive behavior that you would immediately recognize and change. Instead, it creates patterns that look like wisdom, caution, and responsibility, but actually function as subtle forms of self-sabotage that keep you stuck in familiar patterns of limitation. Your perfectionism looks like wanting to do things right, but it functions as a way to avoid ever having to find out what you're truly capable of. Your over-research looks like being thorough and responsible, but it functions as a way to avoid the vulnerability of taking action before you feel completely prepared. Your risk aversion looks like protecting your financial security, but it functions as a way to avoid the discomfort of growth, change, and the uncertainty that comes with creating something better than what you currently have. The wound is smart. It knows that if it told you directly, don't invest, don't start a business, don't ask for more money, you would recognize that voice as fear and might choose to act anyway. So instead, it disguises itself as prudence, as wisdom, as care for your future self. It tells you that you're being responsible by waiting until you have more money saved before you start investing, even though waiting guarantees that you'll have less money in the long run due to lost compound growth. It tells you that you're being realistic by not pursuing opportunities that excite you, even though what it calls realism is actually a trauma response designed to keep you safe from disappointment. But here's what your wound doesn't want you to understand. The very trauma that created your financial limitations also gave you the exact tools you need to heal them and transform them into your greatest financial strengths. Your sensitivity to financial anxiety means you're naturally good at spotting potential problems and avoiding costly mistakes. Your tendency to over-research means you have the patience and attention to detail that wealth building requires. Your perfectionism means you have the standards and work ethic that create long-term success. Your caution means you have the risk management skills that protect wealth once it's created. The problem isn't that you have these traits. The problem is that they're being filtered through an unhealed wound that turns your superpowers into kryptonite. But what happens when you heal the wound? What happens when you maintain all of your natural gifts, but remove the trauma-based programming that's been hijacking them? What happens when your sensitivity becomes intuition, your research skills become strategic advantage, your perfectionism becomes excellence, and your caution becomes calculated risk-taking? What happens is that you don't just become successful with money, you become successful in a way that's sustainable, ethical, and aligned with your values because you're operating from wholeness rather than woundedness. You make financial decisions from wisdom rather than fear, from abundance rather than scarcity, from self-trust rather than self-doubt. This is why healing isn't just the foundation of financial success. Healing is financial success. Every dollar you earn from a healed place is a dollar that expands your capacity for more abundance. Every investment you make from a place of wholeness is an investment that compounds not just financially, but energetically. Every financial decision you make from self-trust creates more experiences that validate your trustworthiness, breaking the quantum mirror of limitation and creating a new mirror that reflects your inherent worthiness and capability. But how do you heal a wound that's been running your life for so long that it feels like your identity? How do you change patterns that are encoded in your nervous system, beliefs that feel like facts, expectations that seem like inevitable reality? How do you break free from the observer effect that's been creating the same financial limitations over and over again, year after year, decision after decision? The answer is both simpler and more revolutionary than you might expect. It requires you to do the one thing your wound has been protecting you from your entire life. It requires you to finally feel the feelings you've been avoiding, to face the fears you've been running from, and to embrace the very vulnerability that your perfectionism and analysis paralysis have been designed to help you avoid. But when you finally have the courage to turn toward your wound instead of running from it, something miraculous happens. Your mind wants a new technique, but your soul wants one thing. It wants to heal. And this is where everything you've been taught about manifestation, about success, about building wealth gets turned completely upside down. Because the most radical act you can perform, the most revolutionary step you can take toward the financial abundance you've been seeking, isn't learning a new investment strategy, or developing better discipline, or pushing through your fears with willpower. It's doing the one thing your perfectionist, analytical, control-oriented mind has been desperately trying to avoid. It's turning toward your wound and finally allowing yourself to feel what you've been running from your entire life. This goes against everything you've been conditioned to believe about success. You've been taught that healing is something you do after you achieve your goals, that emotions are obstacles to overcome, that vulnerability is weakness, that the path to financial security runs through more knowledge, better strategies, and stronger discipline. You've been told that successful people don't let their feelings get in the way of their decisions, that wealthy people are rational and objective and immune to the emotional chaos that keeps everyone else stuck. But here's what they don't tell you. Every person who has created lasting wealth, every entrepreneur who has built something meaningful, every investor who has generated consistent returns over decades has had to face and heal the same wounds you're carrying. The difference between them and the people who stay stuck isn't that they don't have emotional baggage. It's that they've learned to transform their baggage into fuel for their journey instead of allowing it to be the anchor that keeps them trapped in the harbor of their comfort zone. The rebellion of healing begins with a radical reframe. Your wound isn't your weakness, it's your superpower in disguise. Your sensitivity to financial anxiety isn't a character flaw. It's a finely tuned radar system that can detect opportunities and risks that other people miss. Your perfectionism isn't a productivity killer. It's a quality control mechanism that can create exceptional results when it's channeled properly. Your fear of making mistakes isn't cowardice. It's wisdom that can protect you from the kind of impulsive decisions that destroy wealth. Investopedia +2. The problem has never been that you have these traits. The problem is that they're being hijacked by unhealed trauma that turns your gifts into curses, your strengths into limitations, your superpowers into kryptonite. But when you heal the underlying wound, when you finally give yourself permission to feel the feelings you've been avoiding, to face the fears you've been running from, to embrace the vulnerability you've been protecting yourself against, something miraculous happens. Your sensitivity becomes intuition. Your perfectionism becomes excellence. Your caution becomes calculated risk-taking. Your analytical nature becomes strategic advantage. This isn't about becoming a different person. This is about becoming who you actually are, underneath all the protective mechanisms, all the survival strategies, all the armor you've been wearing since childhood. This is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that got buried under years of conditioning, under layers of other people's fears and limitations, under the weight of a world that taught you to be afraid of your own power. The first step in this rebellion is understanding that healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what was never broken in the first place. You are not damaged goods that need to be repaired. You are not a problem that needs to be solved. You are not a collection of flaws that need to be overcome. You are a powerful, creative, abundant being who learned to hide your light because the world felt too dangerous, too unpredictable, too threatening to let your true nature shine. Your financial struggles aren't evidence of your inadequacy. They're evidence of your unexpressed potential. Every dollar you haven't earned because you were too afraid to ask for what you're worth is a dollar that represents your untapped value. Every investment you haven't made because you were paralyzed by analysis is an investment that represents your unclaimed growth. Every opportunity you've missed because you didn't feel ready is an opportunity that represents your unused capacity for success. But how do you heal something that's been running your life for so long that it feels like your identity? How do you face fears that feel so overwhelming they seem to threaten your very survival? How do you embrace vulnerability when your entire nervous system is designed to protect you from exactly that kind of exposure? The answer lies in understanding that healing isn't about elimination. It's about integration. You don't heal your financial anxiety by getting rid of it. You heal it by learning to work with it, by understanding what it's trying to protect you from, by honoring the wisdom it contains while refusing to let it make your decisions for you. You don't heal your perfectionism by becoming careless. You heal it by channeling your high standards into excellence while releasing the impossible expectations that keep you paralyzed. Engage WM+1. This is where the real work begins, and it's completely different from anything you've tried before. Instead of trying to think your way out of your patterns, you're going to feel your way through them. Instead of analyzing your way to clarity, you're going to breathe your way to breakthrough. Instead of forcing yourself to take action before you feel ready, you're going to train your nervous system to feel safe with uncertainty, comfortable with imperfection, excited about possibility, instead of terrified of potential loss. The first technique in this rebellion is what I call observer breathing. Right now, as you're watching this video, I want you to notice what happens in your body when you think about making a significant financial decision. Maybe it's investing a large sum of money, or starting a business, or asking for a substantial raise, or making any choice that involves financial risk. Notice where you feel tension, tightness, or anxiety in your physical body. This isn't about judging these sensations or trying to make them go away. This is about becoming curious about them, about relating to them as information rather than obstacles. Now, instead of trying to breathe away the tension, I want you to breathe into it. Place your hand on the area where you feel the sensation most strongly, and imagine that you're breathing directly into that space, not to fix it or change it or make it go away, but simply to be present with it, to acknowledge it, to let it know that you're finally ready to listen to what it's been trying to tell you all these years. This is completely counterintuitive to everything your mind wants to do. Your mind wants to solve the problem, to eliminate the discomfort, to figure out a strategy for overcoming the obstacle. But your nervous system doesn't respond to logic. It responds to safety, to presence, to the felt sense that you're no longer trying to fight against parts of yourself, but instead learning to work with them as allies in your growth. As you breathe into the sensation, you might notice that it begins to shift, to soften, to reveal layers underneath the initial tension. You might discover that what felt like anxiety is actually excitement that didn't feel safe to express. You might find that what felt like fear is actually intuition that's been trying to guide you toward better decisions. You might realize that what felt like inadequacy is actually sensitivity that can become your greatest asset once you learn to trust it instead of fighting against it. The second technique is what I call radical acceptance. This goes against every instinct your perfectionist mind has, but it's the key to breaking the cycle that's been keeping you stuck. Instead of trying to become ready, instead of waiting until you feel prepared, instead of researching until you know everything there is to know about a decision, I want you to practice accepting that you will never feel completely ready, you will never be totally prepared, and you will never have perfect information. LinkedIn. This isn't about being reckless or impulsive. This is about recognizing that the feeling of readiness you've been waiting for is a fantasy created by your wound to keep you safe from disappointment, rejection, and loss. Successful people don't wait until they feel ready. They act while they're scared. They invest while they're uncertain. They start businesses while they're still learning. They make decisions with incomplete information because they understand that motion creates clarity in ways that analysis never can. But here's the key. This acceptance has to happen at the nervous system level, not just the intellectual level. Your mind might understand that perfect preparation is impossible, but your body needs to feel safe with imperfection before you can consistently take action from that understanding. This is where the real training begins. I want you to start with small acts of imperfection that have no significant consequences, but train your nervous system to tolerate uncertainty. Send an email without rereading it 17 times. Make a small purchase without researching every possible alternative. Have a conversation without scripting every possible response. These tiny acts of rebellion against your perfectionism create new neural pathways that prove to your nervous system that imperfection is not only survivable, but often more effective than endless preparation. The third technique is what I call financial exposure therapy. This is where you deliberately put yourself in situations that trigger your financial anxiety in small, manageable doses, not to overwhelm yourself, but to build your tolerance for the discomfort that comes with financial growth. If you're afraid of investing, start by investing an amount so small that losing it would be disappointing but not devastating. Maybe $50 or $100. The goal isn't to make money. The goal is to train your nervous system to be okay with having money at risk, to experience the sensation of potential loss without letting it trigger your full survival response. Audrey NMMFT. If you're afraid of asking for more money, practice asking for small things first. Ask for a discount at a local business. Ask for an upgrade when you're traveling. Ask a friend to recommend you for an opportunity. These interactions have nothing to do with your main financial goals, but they train the neural pathways involved in advocating for yourself, in believing you deserve more than you currently have, in tolerating the possibility of hearing no without interpreting it as evidence of your unworthiness. If you're afraid of starting a business, start the smallest possible version of a business. Sell something you already own. Offer a service you already know how to provide. Create something simple that takes an hour to make and costs almost nothing to produce. The goal isn't to build an empire overnight. The goal is to prove to your nervous system that you can create value, exchange it for money, and survive the vulnerability that comes with putting yourself and your work out into the world. Each of these exposures creates what I call evidence of capability, real experiences that contradict the limiting beliefs your wound has been whispering to you for years. Every time you take imperfect action and survive, every time you feel scared and do it anyway, every time you tolerate uncertainty without collapsing into analysis paralysis, you're creating new memories that your nervous system can reference the next time you're faced with a similar situation. But here's what makes this process truly revolutionary. You're not trying to eliminate fear, anxiety, or uncertainty. You're learning to take action while these feelings are present, to make decisions while your nervous system is activated, to move forward while your wound is trying to protect you. This is the difference between courage and fearlessness. Fearlessness is the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and choosing to act from your values and goals rather than from your trauma and limitations. The fourth technique is what I call identity integration. This is where you begin to consciously choose which aspects of your personality you want to express in any given moment, rather than being unconsciously driven by whichever part of you is most activated by stress or fear. When you're making a financial decision, you have multiple identities available to you. The wounded child who learned that money was dangerous, the wise adult who understands investment principles, the creative entrepreneur who sees opportunities everywhere, the careful steward who protects what you've built, the bold risk-taker who knows that growth requires uncertainty, the center for healing. Most people let their circumstances determine which identity shows up. When they're stressed about money, the wounded child takes control. When they're analyzing an investment, the perfectionist takes over. When they're considering a new opportunity, the risk-averse protector makes the decision. But you can learn to consciously choose which aspect of yourself you want to lead in any given situation. Before making any significant financial decision, take a moment to check in with all parts of yourself. What is the wounded child afraid of? What does the wise adult know? What does the entrepreneur see? What does the protector want to preserve? What does the adventurer want to explore? Instead of letting one part dominate the decision-making process, you can integrate the wisdom of all these aspects and make choices that honor both your need for security and your desire for growth. This integration process transforms your internal conflict from a liability into an asset. Instead of being paralyzed by competing voices in your head, you become someone who can consider multiple perspectives before making decisions, who can balance risk and reward in sophisticated ways, who can move forward with both caution and courage, because you're not being driven by any single impulse or fear. The fifth and most powerful technique is what I call quantum identity shifting. This is where you begin to embody the version of yourself who already has what you want, not as a visualization exercise or positive thinking practice, but as a nervous system training protocol that actually changes your energetic frequency. When you're trying to manifest abundance from a frequency of lack, you're asking the universe to give you something that your own energy is rejecting. But when you can consistently access the frequency of someone who already has abundant, who already feels worthy of wealth, who already trusts their financial decisions, you become a magnet for experiences that match that frequency. The Center for Healing, Park Tour. This isn't about pretending or fake it till you make it positive thinking. This is about accessing the parts of yourself that are already whole, already abundant, already capable, and learning to operate from those parts more consistently. You already have moments when you feel confident about money, when you make good decisions, when you trust yourself. The goal is to make these moments more frequent and more accessible, not by forcing yourself to feel differently, but by creating the internal conditions that naturally give rise to those states. When you're considering a financial decision, instead of asking, "What should I do?" from your current frequency of uncertainty and anxiety, ask, "What would the version of me who already has financial abundance do in this situation?" And then listen, not to your mind's analysis of what that person might do, but to the actual felt sense of how that version of you would approach the decision. How would they hold their body? How would they breathe? What would they be curious about? What would they be excited about? What risks would they be willing to take? This quantum identity shifting works because you're not trying to become someone else. You're learning to access aspects of yourself that already exist, but have been buried under layers of conditioning and trauma. The abundant, confident, decisive version of you isn't a fantasy you need to create. It's a reality you need to remember. Every technique, every healing practice, every act of courage is simply removing the obstacles that have been preventing you from being who you actually are. The rebellion of healing culminates in what I call the sacred no and the sacred yes. The sacred no is your newfound ability to say no to opportunities, people, and situations that drain your energy, compromise your values, or keep you stuck in patterns that don't serve your growth. This includes saying no to the voice in your head that tells you to wait until you're more prepared, to research a little more before taking action, to play it safe instead of taking calculated risks. The sacred yes is your reclaimed ability to say yes to opportunities that excite you, even when you don't feel completely ready, to say yes to investments that align with your goals, even when you can't predict the exact outcome, to say yes to asking for what you're worth, even when you're not sure you'll get it, to say yes to starting something new, even when you don't have all the details figured out. Both the sacred no and the sacred yes require you to trust yourself in ways that your wound has been trying to protect you from. But as you practice these small acts of self-trust, as you accumulate evidence of your capability through imperfect action, as you learn to navigate uncertainty without collapsing into paralysis, something remarkable happens. You begin to realize that you've always had everything you need to create the financial life you want. The knowledge, the intuition, the courage, the wisdom, it's all been there, waiting for you to stop trying to protect yourself from life and start learning to live it fully. This is the true rebellion. Not against the world, not against your circumstances, not against the people who have more than you, but against the limiting beliefs, the survival patterns, and the protective mechanisms that have been keeping you small. It's a rebellion in favor of your own magnificence, your own potential, your own right to abundance, success, and financial freedom. But this rebellion requires one final, crucial understanding that changes everything you think you know about manifestation, about success, and about your relationship with money itself. What you're about to understand is the deepest truth about manifestation, and it will change everything. Because everything you've been taught about creating abundance, everything you've been told about attracting wealth, everything you've believed about the relationship between effort and results has been backwards. You've been trying to get something you already have. You've been trying to become someone you already are. You've been trying to create a reality that's already yours. Manifestation isn't a struggle. It's the inevitable reflection of a mind that has finally reconnected with the soul. It's not about forcing the universe to give you what you want. It's about removing the obstacles that have been preventing you from receiving what's already yours. It's not about becoming worthy of abundance. It's about remembering that you were born worthy and learning to operate from that truth instead of from the lie that convinced you otherwise. Your journey wasn't about arriving at a destination. It was about remembering where you never left, because the truth that your perfectionist mind has been protecting you from, the truth that your anxiety has been trying to help you avoid, the truth that your fear of making mistakes has been designed to keep you from discovering is this: you are already whole, already abundant, already worthy, already powerful, already everything you've been trying to become. The financial struggles you've experienced, the opportunities you've missed, the paralysis you felt when faced with money decisions, none of these were evidence of your inadequacy. They were evidence of your magnificence, trying to break through layers of conditioning, trauma, and limiting beliefs that were never yours to begin with. Every moment of anxiety was your authentic self trying to emerge from behind the protective walls your wounded inner child built to keep you safe. Every moment of analysis paralysis was your true power trying to express itself despite the programming that taught you to doubt your capabilities. This is the paradigm shift that changes everything. You don't need to acquire abundance. You need to stop blocking it. You don't need to develop worthiness. You need to stop believing you're unworthy. You don't need to become confident. You need to stop identifying with the parts of yourself that learn to doubt. You don't need to learn how to make good financial decisions. You need to heal the wounds that make every decision feel life-threatening. The version of you that has abundant financial resources, the version that makes confident decisions, the version that takes calculated risks and creates consistent wealth. That version isn't a future possibility you need to work toward. That version is who you are right now. Underneath all the conditioning, beneath all the fear-based programming, behind all the protective mechanisms that have been running your life since childhood. This is why all your preparation hasn't made you feel more prepared. This is why all your research hasn't made you feel more confident. This is why all your analysis hasn't made you feel more ready. Because you've been trying to become someone you already are, instead of simply removing the obstacles that have been preventing you from expressing who you've always been. Every technique I've shared with you, every healing practice, every act of courage, every moment of vulnerability, these aren't tools for creating a new version of yourself. These are tools for uncovering the version of yourself that has always existed, waiting patiently for you to stop trying to protect yourself from life and start learning to live it fully. The observer breathing isn't teaching you how to manage anxiety. It's teaching you how to be present with your authentic experience without trying to control or change it. The radical acceptance isn't teaching you how to be comfortable with imperfection. It's teaching you how to operate from wholeness instead of from the belief that you're broken and need to be fixed. The financial exposure therapy isn't teaching you how to take risks. It's teaching you how to remember that you are inherently safe, worthy, and capable, regardless of external circumstances. The identity integration isn't teaching you how to access different parts of yourself. It's teaching you how to recognize that all these parts were always available, always present, always part of your complete self. The quantum identity shifting isn't teaching you how to become abundant. It's teaching you how to remember that abundance is your natural state and scarcity is the learned limitation that you can choose to release. This is the truth that will set you free. Your financial anxiety isn't a character flaw. It's sensitivity that can become intuition once you learn to trust it instead of fighting it. Your perfectionism isn't a productivity problem. It's attention to excellence that can create extraordinary results once you channel it toward progress instead of paralysis. Your fear of making mistakes isn't cowardice. It's wisdom that can protect and grow your wealth once you learn to take calculated risks instead of avoiding all risk. Every trait that has been limiting you is actually a superpower that's been hijacked by unhealed trauma. Every pattern that has been keeping you stuck is actually a strength that's been misdirected by conditioning that was never yours to begin with. Every limitation you've experienced is actually evidence of your unlimited potential trying to express itself despite the programming that taught you to play small. The most radical realization of all is this: you don't have financial problems. You have amnesia. You've forgotten who you are underneath all the stories, all the beliefs, all the conditioning that convinced you that you're somehow separate from the abundance that is your birthright. You've forgotten that the same creative force that grows forests and moves planets and creates galaxies is the same force that breathes you, that beats your heart, that gives you ideas and insights and the capacity to turn thoughts into things. When you truly understand this, when you really get that manifestation isn't about getting something from outside yourself, but about allowing what's already inside you to express itself without interference, everything changes. You stop trying to force outcomes and start allowing them to unfold. You stop trying to control every variable and start trusting the intelligence that has been guiding your life since before you were born. You stop trying to become worthy and start operating from the truth that you were born worthy and that worthiness can never be earned, lost, or taken away. This is why the healing work is so crucial. Not because you're broken and need to be fixed, but because you're perfect and need to remember it. Not because you're lacking something essential, but because you've been taught to ignore the abundance that has always been yours. Not because you need to become someone different, but because you need to stop pretending to be someone you're not. The financial abundance you've been seeking isn't a reward you earn for doing enough healing work or learning enough strategies or overcoming enough fears. It's the natural expression of who you are when you stop interfering with your own magnificence. It's what happens when you align your actions with your truth instead of with your trauma. It's the inevitable result of operating from wholeness instead of from the belief that you're somehow fundamentally flawed or inadequate. This is the secret that wealthy people know, consciously or unconsciously. Money flows to people who believe they deserve it, who expect it, who feel comfortable receiving it, who trust themselves to handle it wisely. And all of these qualities aren't things you develop. They're things you remember. They're aspects of your true nature that get revealed when you heal the wounds that convinced you otherwise. The most beautiful part of this understanding is that it makes success inevitable rather than uncertain. When you're trying to get something you don't have, success depends on external factors, market conditions, other people's decisions, circumstances beyond your control. But when you're simply removing the obstacles to expressing what you already are, success becomes a matter of consistency rather than luck, of practice rather than perfection, of alignment rather than achievement. This is why some people seem to effortlessly create wealth while others struggle, despite having more knowledge, better strategies, and stronger work ethics. The successful ones aren't working harder. They're working from a different frequency, a different set of beliefs, a different relationship with their own power and worthiness. they've either never lost touch with their inherent abundance, or they've done the inner work to reconnect with it. And here's what they understand: that changes everything. Wealth isn't about money, it's about energy. Money is just one form that abundance takes, but abundance itself is an energy that expresses itself through financial resources, creative opportunities, meaningful relationships, optimal health, inner peace, and the capacity to contribute to something larger than yourself. When you heal the wounds that have been blocking your natural flow of abundance, when you remember who you are underneath all the conditioning, when you start operating from wholeness instead of from woundedness, you don't just become successful with money, you become successful as a human being. You don't just create financial security, you create a life of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment that happens to include financial abundance as one of its many expressions. This is the victory you've been seeking without realizing it. Not the victory of overcoming your limitations, but the victory of remembering that the limitations were never real in the first place. Not the victory of becoming someone worthy of success, but the victory of recognizing that you were always worthy and learning to live from that truth. Not the victory of achieving your goals, but the victory of discovering that you are the goal, whole, complete, abundant, and perfect, exactly as you are right now. The reflection of victory isn't a future state you arrive at after enough healing work, or enough courage, or enough right action. The reflection of victory is what you see when you look in the mirror and recognize the magnificent being who has been there all along, waiting patiently for you to stop trying to become someone else and start being who you've always been. Your financial anxiety will never completely disappear. It will transform into intuition that guides you toward wise decisions. Your perfectionism will never go away. It will evolve into excellence that creates extraordinary results. Your sensitivity will never diminish. It will develop into empathy and insight that gives you advantages other people don't have. Your caution will never vanish. It will mature into strategic thinking that protects and grows your wealth. You don't need to become a different person to have the financial life you want. You need to become more fully yourself, the self that existed before you learned to doubt your worthiness, before you learned to fear your power, before you learned to make yourself small, to make other people comfortable. That self is still there, underneath all the protective layers, behind all the survival strategies, beneath all the conditioning that convinced you that you were somehow separate from the abundance that is your natural state. The journey ends not because you've arrived somewhere new, but because you've finally recognized where you've been all along: home, whole, abundant, worthy, powerful, ready. If this message has awakened something in you, if you recognize yourself in this journey, if you're finally ready to stop protecting yourself from your own magnificence and start living from the truth of who you really are, I want to hear from you. Hit that like button if this video has shifted something fundamental in how you see yourself and your relationship with money. Subscribe and ring the notification bell, because this is just the beginning. I'm going to be sharing the specific techniques, the practical steps, the real-world applications of everything we've talked about today. Leave a comment and tell me, what's the one financial decision you've been avoiding because you didn't feel ready? What's the one opportunity you've been researching to death instead of taking action on? What's the one thing you would do with money if you truly believed you deserved abundance? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. someone who's been stuck in analysis paralysis, someone who's been waiting to feel ready before they start living. And if you're ready to go deeper, if you want the complete roadmap for transforming your financial anxiety into financial abundance, if you want the specific healing protocols and practical strategies that will help you move from knowing this information to living it, check the description below for the resources that will support you on this journey. Remember, you're not broken. You don't need fixing. You just need remembering. And that remembering starts now. Your abundant life is waiting, not in the future, after you've done enough work, or learned enough, or healed enough. Right now, today, in this moment, because you are already everything you've been trying to become. Welcome home.